Hey, this is Ramon, Channel Alpha 4, and this is part of my Bible study series. This is a supplemental to my rereading of Genesis 1 through 3, and this is going to be Theogony. Now, just to be clear, Theogony is not talking about parallels with actual biblical texts, but the language in Theogony and in Working Days is the language that we use in our Bibles, both Greek, the Sepugait, the Latin Vulgate, and in the English, in the King James Version, you will get these terms, and these terms originally had different meaning and completely different contexts. So you have to understand that if you're going to understand the meaning that was implicated in the Bible when it was written in these languages. So let's look at what the words that we understand in English would have been in context of in the original Greek and Latin. So, here we go. Theogony. Hesiod's Theogony. Lines 115 through 135, the creation of the world. These things declare to me from the beginning, you muses who dwell in the house of Olympus, and tell me which of them came to be first. First came chasm, chaos, and then broad-breasted Gaia, earth, the secure seat of the immortals who occupy the peaks of snowy Olympus. And came misty Tartarus, in the depths of wide path Gaia. Then Eros, erotic love, most beautiful among the gods, those dissolvers of the flesh. It is he who overcomes the mind and the heart of all, even of wise men. From chasm came forth Eros, darkness, and black Nyx, night. But of Nyx were born Ether, air, and Myrrha, day, whom she conceived and bore from intimate love with Eros, darkness. And Gaia first bore starry Uranus, heaven, equal to herself, to cover her bareness, and to be an ever-sure abode for the blessed gods. And she bore mountains, the haunts of the graceful nymphs, who also dwell among the glens and hills. She bore also the undraining Thalassia, the sea, and with his raging swell, Pontus, he without union or love. But afterwards she lay with Uranus, and by him bore deep, swirling Oceanus, and his daughters, Chios, Criri, and Crios, rule or order, and Hyperion, light, and Ipetius, the spear, are impetus, movement and energy. Thea, prophecy and sight, and Rhea, woman's flow. Thamus, divine justice, and Mnemosyne, memory. And gold-diademed Phoebe, brightness. And lovely Theseus, nurse or grandmother. After them was born the schemer Kronos, time, the most formidable of her children, and he hated his father. To continue on, from Hesiod's Theogony, lines 510 through 511, on women. Epidus married trim-ankled Calymne, fame, daughter of Ocean, and went to bed with her. She bore him stern-hearted Atlas, he who endures. And proud Menatius, doomed might, and clever Prometheus, forethought, and misguided Epimetheus, afterthought, who turned out to be a disaster for the men who ate bread. For it was he who received from Zeus that molded maiden as a wife. Now I want you to note that the way that the Greek used the words is talking about chaos, earth, Tartarus, which would be hell for us, as far as we're concerned. We use that term for hell. Darkness, night, rule, order, sight, and forethought. So you see these themes that have meaning behind them. So when these words were translated into from the Arameric or from the Hebrew into the Greek or to the Latin, these would have had their own meaning, their own ancient meaning attached to these words. So when that connotation comes into the English, we are using words that were not meant how we are using them. Okay? So, for instance, Tartarus to us means hell. Doesn't mean that for the ancient Greeks, but that's the word that was chosen to replace the Hebrew word Sheol. So whenever you have these words that, like, for the underworld then gets changed into Tartarus, and then that in the Prose Edda will then become, or the Elder Edda will then become hell, because hell is Hela. Okay, so you have different words from different cultures that have completely different contexts. So in the language it's first translated into, that's the nearest word for it. But then when that word again gets translated into the English, we somehow keep the second word, the second deviation of the word, and we don't keep the first deviation. Okay, so instead of just translating from the Jewish into the English words, we translate into the Greek or to the Latin or to the Norse, and then that in turn gets put into the English, and then we lose the original meaning and intent of the original word in the Hebrew or in the Arameric or in whatever. So it's important to remember that even our first recorded writings of the Gospels are in Greek, not in Arameric. So Arameric, there we go, is the language that Jesus would have been speaking. So for it to get into the Greek, it already had to jump one lane of translation. So we're already one translation away from the original words of Jesus, or the original words of the Hebrew for the Old Testament. And then we get more translations away the further into it we go. And even with literal translations, many times the translators choose to go back to the Greek Sepugait over the Hebrew. So you're losing a lot of context. All right. Anyway, peace, like, and subscribe. I just thought I'd have that as a little explanation for some of the arguments and cases that I am making and for my interpretations of the Bible. Next will be Work in Days, and that will be the last supplemental, and Working Days is a longer one. Peace, like, subscribe. Talk to you all later.